In this video, we will see how to solve a quadratic equation by completing the perfect square trinomial. The form of the quadratic equation that we will be solving is a squared trinomial where we have a leading coefficient of 1, our second term is a linear term, and our third term is a constant number. We see that the equation that we have in our first example is in that form. First, we must remember that the perfect squared trinomial is the result of solving a squared binomial. The squared binomial is in the form a plus b squared. When we solve a square binomial, our result is the square of the first term plus 2 times the multiplication of the first term times the second term plus the square of the second term. This is what we call a perfect square trinomial, and we got it as a result of a square binomial. What we want to do to solve this quadratic equation is to make sure that it is a perfect square trinomial, so we can then factor it and make it a square binomial. To check if our squared trinomial is perfect, we have to take the half of the second term. In this case, our second term is minus 2x. We take half of minus 2, and it gives us minus 1. Then we take that result and we square it. We got 1. And that is the number that we need in our third term. Since it's not number 1, we are going to pass the number that we have, in this case minus 15, and we pass it to the right side of the equation. And we get x squared minus 2x equals positive 15. Now you can see that I left a space between the 2x and the equal sign. That's because I'm going to add the number that I need to make it a perfect squared trinomial. And I already saw that the number that I need is 1. So I am going to add positive 1 as the third term of the trinomial. Now I just made it a perfect squared trinomial. But I can't just add a number to an equation because I already changed its value. To keep the equation balanced, I need to add the same thing that I added on one side to the other side of the equation. So if I added plus 1 to the left side, I need to add the same number to the right side of the equation to keep it balanced. Now that it's balanced, I can take my perfect square trinomial and factor it into a squared binomial. We take the square root of the first term, which is x, the sign of the second term, negative, and the square root of the third term. The square root of 1 is 1. Now we write our equal sign and we solve the operation on the right. 15 plus 1 is 16. I just factored my perfect square trinomial into a squared binomial. The reason to do this is that now that I have a squared binomial, I can easily find the value of x just by clearing. Remember that when we take the square root of a square, it cancels out. So I can clear by doing the square root of 16. X minus 1 equals the square root of 16. The square root of 16 is positive at negative 4. Just as a note, remember that when we make a square root, we get a positive and a negative result because 4 times 4 is 16, but also minus 4 times minus 4 gives us 16 as a result. So the square root gives us 2 answers. This is what is going to give us our 2 solutions for our quadratic equation. First, let's continue with positive 4. For our first answer, we have that x minus 1 equals 4. Therefore, x is going to be equal to 4 plus 1. X is equal to 5. This is the first solution to our quadratic equation. But we now have to find our second solution with negative 4. X minus 1 is also equal to minus 4. Therefore, x is equal to minus 4 plus 1. X is equal to minus 3. Now we have our second solution to our quadratic equation. To check if our solution is correct, we have to substitute the values of x in the original equation. The square of x is now the square of 5 minus 2 times x, which is 2 times 5, minus 15 should be equal to 0. The square of 5 is 25. Minus 2 times 5 is minus 10. Minus 15 should be equal to 0. 25 minus 10 is 15. Minus 15 should be equal to 0. 15 minus 15 is 0. Therefore, x equals 5 is correct. Now let's check our second solution. X equals minus 3. The square of x is now the square of minus 3 minus 2 times x, which is minus 3, minus 15 should be equal to 0. The square of minus 3 is 9. Minus 2 times minus 3 is positive 6. Minus 15 equals 0. 9 plus 6 is 15. Minus 15 should be 0. 15 minus 15 is 0. Therefore, x equals minus 3 is also correct. Let's solve a second example. Now we have to solve the equation x squared plus 6x minus 7 equals 0. Let's check what we need in our third term in order for our trinomial to be a perfect square trinomial. We said that we must check with the second term in our equation. Take half of it, so half of 6 is 3. And then square the number that we got. In this case, 3 squared is 9. That means that we need a number 9 in our third term in order for the equation to be a perfect square trinomial. Since it's not a number 9, we are going to pass the negative 7, adding to the other side, so we can add the number that we need on the left side of the equation. X squared plus 6x is equal to 7. I left an empty space between the 6x and the equal sign to write the number that I need. I need a positive 9, so I add 9 to both sides of the equation to keep the equation balanced. Now that I added the number that I need, I am going to factorize. To factorize the perfect square trinomial, we take the square root of the first term, x, the sign of the second term, positive, and the square root of the third term, which is 3, and write it as a squared binomial, equal, and we solve the addition of 7 plus 9, and we get 16. Now I can clear, and I get that x plus 3 is equal to the square root of 16. X plus 3 is equal to positive and negative 4. I solve first with one sign and then with the other. X plus 3 is equal to 4. Therefore, x is equal to 4 minus 3, and x is equal to 1. To get our second solution, we use negative 4. X plus 3 is equal to negative 4. Therefore, x is equal to negative 4 minus 3. And this gives us that x is equal to minus 7. To check our solution, we substitute both numbers as the value of x in our original equation. The square of x, which is the square of 1, plus 6 times x, which is 1, minus 7 should be 0. The square of 1 is 1. 6 times 1 is 6. Minus 7 should be 0. 1 plus 6 is 7. Minus 7 should be 0. And 7 minus 7 is 0. Therefore, x equals 1 is correct. We now check with our second solution, x equals minus 7. The square of x is now the square of minus 7 plus 6 times x, which is now minus 7. Minus 7 should be 0. The square of minus 7 is 49. Plus 6 times minus 7 gives us minus 42. minus 7 should be 0. 49 minus 42 gives us 7. Minus 7 should be 0. And 7 minus 7 is 0. Therefore, the solution of x equals minus 7 is also correct. This was a process to solve a quadratic equation in the form x squared plus bx plus c equals 0 by completing the perfect square trinomial. Thank you for watching this video.